Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
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 Hello again and welcome to the program Agriculture on the Move. I am Phillip Sydney. Today's program is a very interesting one. It's very educational. So we're talking genetically modified organisms, what you call GMOs, genetically modified foods, biodiversity, biotechnology, and the works, and of course the impact on the agricultural sector. With me in studio are three guests. They're from various ministries and organizations. I'll allow them to introduce themselves. To my right.
Good morning. Thank you for having us on Agriculture on the Move. My name is Jannel Gabriel. I'm a Sustainable Development and Environment Officer in the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Energy, Science and Technology. And I work in the Biodiversity Unit, protecting St. Lucia's biodiversity. So I'm very happy to be here and to have an opportunity to talk about biodiversity and biosafety and food and so on.
Thank you, Jannel. And of course we have Mr. George.
Very well. Thank you, Sydney. Thank you for having me on Agriculture on the Move. My name is George Emmanuel. I work with CARDI, the Caribbean Agricultural Research and Development Institute. I'm the research assistant there. And I also represent the Institute on the Risk Management Committee of the entire Biosafety Steering Committee within the Ministry of Sustainable Development.
Great. Yes.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. My name is Cletus Alexander. I work with the Ministry of Agriculture. I work in the Denver-Mabuya Valley area. I find the topic this morning is quite interesting because agriculture, there's a link between agriculture and biodiversity. A healthy environment is very important for good crop production. So there is that important link. So I hope I can make a useful contribution this morning because, as you said, it's agriculture, risk, and biodiversity.
Definitely.
Right.
Jannel, I'll start with you. I know you've been pioneering this activity for a while.
Yes.
Give us a little overview of the journey into that program.
Okay. Back in 2005, St. Lucia signed the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. At the time, St. Lucia realized that genetically modified organisms were coming into the country and we needed a way to regulate them. Okay. So we signed this international environmental agreement which would regulate genetically modified organisms created by modern biotechnology. And when we talk about genetically modified organisms, we're talking about novel organisms or living things that are made by taking parts of genes from other organisms which would not naturally mate in nature. Okay. So these new organisms, these genetically modified organisms, we've come up with a system from 2005 till now of a way to regulate them, to make sure that if there are any risks, we are able to know what the risks are, and we can protect the people of St. Lucia and our biodiversity. Because as we're sitting here and we look around at all of these pictures around us, we realize that we're living in a very biodiverse country. We have so many resources, all of our plants, all of our animals, and we're fortunate in a way, so we must protect these things. So that is what the Biosafety Project has been doing from 2012 when it was implemented, and we'll talk a lot more about it. But then why do we need to have this project, and what are the things that it seeks to do? We want to be able to explain that to people so they can stay involved and they can get involved.
Great. George, CARDI's involvement, where is that link?
Very well. Our link pretty much, Sydney, is in that I represent the Institute on the Risk Management Committee within, like I initially mentioned, the National Biosafety Committee, which Jannel has been part of. Obviously, we understand the Cartagena protocols, and we realize that there are a number of administrative procedures. There is a regulatory framework which as well has to be set in place. So, as part of that, I am instrumental in that regard in assisting within the risk management aspect of biosafety and biotechnology in St. Lucia.
Okay. Cletus, the ministry's involvement, where does that come in?
As I said in my opening remarks, agriculture is very much dependent on a healthy environment. So at the Ministry of Agriculture, we deal with the farmers out there. And the farmers, basically, they are the ones using biodiversity to produce the foods that we eat every day. So as the Ministry of Agriculture, you can see, well, there's that link between agriculture and biodiversity, and agriculture and all other departments in government. Because without food, you cannot do anything. Okay. Your food security is very important. And nowadays, every time we hear politicians, school children, every top body talking about food security. So in order to enhance our food security, so it's very important, the topic of biosafety is very important for the Agriculture Ministry.
Okay. Yeah, that is correct, Cletus, because we understand that, you know, trade liberalization, the erosion of preferential treatments for small territories like ours, for example. You know long ago that bananas was the green gold, so you would just produce bananas and you would sell. Now, so there isn't that preferential arrangement with the international market, so we have to find ways and means to produce our food efficiently as well, using the technology available and the new technology, biotechnology, which is new. It can assist us in guaranteeing food security by allowing us to use the technology to make sure that we can produce varieties and we can preserve our own varieties as well, assisting us in the creation of medicines and vaccines and all of those sort of things.
Interesting.
The current situation, as we're talking about food production, is that the world's population is expected to reach 9 billion by the year 2050. So we're also dealing with reducing land space, we're dealing with climate change, we're dealing with more disasters and climatic events. So we're facing a situation where we'll have more people and less space available for food. So what are some of the solutions? And biotechnology, the use of living things to create a new process, is being looked at as one possible tool that we can use to address that problem of food production, food security, nutritional security. So it is a tool that is available to us, and just like any other tool, like a hammer for instance, it can be good or it can be bad. It's all about knowing how to use it, and with the idea of producing foods, producing useful vaccines and medications, finding more efficient ways of delivering vaccines and medications to people all around the world. We are looking to safe modern biotechnology as a way of getting that done. So, of course, we realize that there are pros and cons, and so we're entering into this with caution, and that is what the biosafety project will do, allow us to see what the pros are, see what the cons are, and then make a decision for our country.
So what are the right away the disadvantages?
To start
the disadvantages, let me risk. There's risk.
Yes.
Basically, the risks involved. And the risks are numerous. And they range from, say, for example, a country actually losing its natural biodiversity, or all the endemic species, or all the species of plants and animals which are particular to that region, country. So one of the risks would be you lose what you having before, and you're having something else in the end.
Hold that thought. We are due for a break. You're watching Agriculture on the Move. We're due for a break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
The Pesticides and Toxic Chemicals Control Board reminds all importers of such chemicals that according to the Pesticides and Toxic Chemicals Act, only chemicals which have been registered and granted approval by the board can be legally imported for use in St. Lucia. Agricultural and household chemicals that are not licensed for use in St. Lucia can be harmful to its users and the general public. Before placing orders, importers are advised to check the approved list of pesticides or household chemicals to ensure that they can be legally imported. An import license must be obtained from the Research and Development Division of the Ministry of Agriculture and must be submitted to the Customs and Excise Department to facilitate the clearance of the consignment. For further information, contact the Ministry of Agriculture's Research Division at Union or call telephone numbers 468-5600 or 468-5602.
Welcome back to the program, Agriculture on the Move. We're discussing biodiversity, GMOs, and the works. George, you were talking about the
risks
and
right,
talking about
right.
the disadvantages. Can you
Very
expound
well.
a little more on that?
I will let Jannel and Cletus actually articulate what the risks are, because there are a number of risks. But with us, for example, and with me in particular, we're concerned about the administrative procedures of what comes in and what goes out in your country, as well as what is the legislative framework which is in place to look at biosafety management within St. Lucia in itself. So in as much as there are other risks and other disadvantages, but I just wanted to specify that there are administrative procedures, what is in place to allow what comes in, which is a genetically modified organism, and as well as what legal procedures are in place to protect when risks have gotten out of control.
Jannel, can you expound on that?
Okay, so the risks have been categorized either as environmental, and as George mentioned before, there's the possibility that if genetically modified organisms are outgrowing, then you can lose your biodiversity, or you can get a mixing, and so you don't have the original stock left anymore. You have socioeconomic risks, which would involve the changes in costs, the practices of farmers, the loss of their traditional knowledge and their traditional practices. And you also have agricultural environmental risks, which would be more along the lines of crops. If one farmer is growing organic and you have another farmer who's growing a GMO, then there's the risk of that contamination, because once the genes go out, you cannot call them back in. So we have those levels of risk. There are also health concerns, and while there are no studies which make a clear connection between health factors and the consumption of genetically modified organisms, there have been some studies that show you have allergies, you have toxicity, you have development of tumors and different things when people have bad reactions to it. Sometimes it is a case where, for instance, there was the genetically modified tomato which had genes from a fish, and people who were allergic to fish were having reactions to when they ate that tomato. So, just the knowledge, having the knowledge of what it is you're dealing with, helps for us to be able to address all of those risks. And we're not talking only about risk, because there are benefits as well, and we can jump in here.
I believe the benefits outweigh the risks.
Right, in some cases, but we don't want to categorically cut it all off, because there are benefits to us, and knowledge is what will help us to determine what's best for us to do. So some of the benefits.
In terms of risk, the technology is being applied in two ways in agriculture. Basically for insect resistance and herbicide tolerance. Take for example, those persons who are familiar with what they call Roundup. The active ingredient in Roundup is what they call glyphosate.
Yes.
So right now, the producing glyphosate tolerant crops. By that I mean, well, you will spray glyphosate on certain crops that are genetically engineered, and the glyphosate will not affect the crop. Also, those of us who know, there's a product called dipel, bacillus. Now, bacillus is a naturally occurring bacterium, and it is known to produce some toxin that is fatal to a number of species of caterpillar. So what is happening right now, you have BT-ready crops, in that the crop is genetically engineered. The BT right now is in the crop. The farmer don't have to right now go and buy the bacillus in the store to spray the crop. It is already in the crop. So what you find, pests feeding on that crop. Now remember out there you have what is called natural enemies.
That's right.
That is what you depend on. If you want to use all the chemicals that you have out there, you have the natural. Every organism in nature, there's a natural enemy for that organism. So you find when your natural enemies feed on those crops, they've been destroyed. Again, GMO crops tend to have what you call terminator genes. These genes prevent them from producing viable seeds. So what you left with, the farmer will have, every time the farmer wants to plant a crop, the farmer will have to go to the agri shop to buy seeds. And it's poor farmers in developing countries, will they have money to buy seeds every time they plant a crop.
So the benefits basically goes back to the manufacturers.
Yes, again, if you big companies like Monsanto, 80% of all the seeds they produce all the seeds.
Right.
So what's happening? They produce the genetically modified seeds. They produce the glyphosate also.
Right.
So they're the ones benefiting. There's a socioeconomic aspect of it. So they're the ones benefiting from all the profits.
But my next question is, how is the farmer, is he educated enough to identify genetically modified seeds and also maybe other chemicals that are required?
That's the exact reason why we are here.
Right.
Right.
Sort of,
Well said.
it's like an outreach program to the farmers out there. But it's very difficult without labeling for somebody to tell you, well, that's a genetically modified seed.
Which is what
It's
brings us to the biosafety law,
Okay.
because the biosafety law, once it is passed, will require that any product that is genetically modified or has a 0.9% content of genetically modified material must be labeled. So the producer must let the consumer know that this has genetic modification. And before they get permission to bring this thing into the country or to grow it in the country, it has to go through an application and approval process. Through that approval process, we will look at what is the modification? Is it beneficial? How does it apply to our environment? Because we'll remember that these things are produced overseas in environments that are different from ours. So we need to do our risk assessments based on our conditions locally, case by case, trait by trait, modification by modification, and decide for ourselves. Do we want this or not? We feel it out. So do we want a crop that is modified to resist a herbicide? Or, for instance, there's also markers, antibiotic resistance markers that are used, just to know if the trait has been taken up. So you have a crop that is now resistant to any antibiotic. How does that affect you if you eat it?
Right.
And you are taking antibiotics? Will it prevent them from working? So some of those things we need to know. We need to have that information, and the biosafety law will make that information available. It will say you have to provide this information to us.
How are you certain that the information on the labeling is accurate?
Very well. That's an interesting question, Sydney. And Jannel alluded to the biosafety law, and part of the biosafety law would enhance our laboratory procedures to ensure that we or there are persons with the technical capacity to ascertain what percentages of genetically modification is within the product that they're going to use.
Yes.
So that framework is what is being established currently as we speak, to ensure that the health risks and the safety risks are minimized, and that and the protocols or the procedures of the use of that organism are adhered to.
But are you saying, are you going to get, is a lab already established and your technical people are in place to do that sort of testing?
A number of persons have been trained.
Yeah,
Jannel has been trained. I know there's Ernesto who has been trained.
George
Cletus
has
has
been
some
trained.
training. I have some training as well. So a number of persons are trained in GMO detection.
Hold that thought again.
Very well. Oh, I'm always for the
Yes,
break.
we are due for another break. You're watching Agriculture on the Move. Be right back. Stay tuned.
St. Lucia is blessed year-round with an abundance of fruits. But do you know that most of them go to waste? Here's an opportunity to invest either from a small to a large-scale agro-processing enterprise. You can contact the Ministry of Agriculture for further information.
Welcome back to the program Agriculture on the Move. Yes, George, I am interested in, you're trained, yeah?
Right.
But I'm looking at the physical structure. I'm looking at a lab, so that you can go in there, something comes in, there's a label, you have your material, we need to tell St. Lucia, hello, you can, it is safe for you to use that commodity. How can we ascertain that without a lab?
One of the outputs of this project will be the creation of a lab, the procurement of the equipment, and the training of the personnel who will operate it. So at the end of the project, we would have developed that capacity to test, and not just to test, but to test with some level of certainty and confidence that this is what we are doing, and this is the decision that is made based on the information that we found in our testing and in our labs and so on. So persons are being trained both here and overseas. The lab equipment has been purchased and the lab is being outfitted so that we have a good quality, a good standard, so our results are safe and can be believed and relied upon. Well, we realize that St. Lucians will have questions, and the only way to answer those questions well is for our people to be trained. It would be okay to get outside persons, but we need the capacity locally, and that's what we are working on.
Okay. Going back to Cletus, in terms of trials, field trials, on-farm trials, how effective is this going to be?
Well, if we have to undergo production in terms of GM crops, it's very important, because what you want out there, your main objective will be to prevent contamination, crop contamination. By that I mean, take for example, you have a wild species of corn that is indigenous to St. Lucia, and somebody decide to bring some GMO. You, as an authority, you will have to protect your indigenous variety. You don't want to be in a situation where there's cross-pollination between the GM and the indigenous, and the local variety. So monitoring is going to be very important, very, very important. Take for example, if a man decides to bring GM seeds, you as an authority, you have to make sure that when the farmer, whoever is going to do the planting, that package, take for example, if the farmer plants 50% of the seeds, you have, as the authority, you have to know that, so that when you're doing your monitoring, 50% was sown, and you have to know where the farmer had stored the extra. You don't want to be in a situation where the farmer plant 50%, and he's going to plant in Roseau. He has his brother living in Swazel. His brother go in the refrigerator, take the other 50%, have it somewhere in Dennery. You as the authority, you have to be on the dot. You have to be monitoring. Even after the crop is harvested, you have to know whether that crop is destroyed. Because you can't leave that crop in the environment.
But that's a humongous task,
That is the regulatory framework which I alluded to, Sydney. There are mechanisms which must be set in place to ensure that all of that monitoring is taking place. Data is recorded as well, that everybody is on board, including the public. And I think this program is not enough time for us to actually talk about.
Because my other question is, are we sure that as we speak, a farmer is not planting a GMO planting material?
I'm sure he is. We also have people who bring in things from overseas and smuggle.
Illegal.
Yeah, they smuggle illegally.
Introduction.
I mean, I know farmers who say, well, I have these tomatoes and they grow well, but what is the risk involved, and what are the contamination of our indigenous species involved with? So
it is a humongous task, and it is a task that requires coordination and cooperation, not just nationally, because remember that we also have CSME, and so whatever comes into St. Lucia can move freely around the rest of the Caribbean. So the network has to be really tight, and everybody has to be on board. But why are we doing it? Because of the benefits that we can also get from GMOs. We don't want to lock ourselves in a position where we are unable to get any of the advantages, which we didn't really get a chance to go into, but I think we should say that these crops are being produced because they can be beneficial. You can have crops that would grow in drought conditions, in salt conditions, in places in soils with low nutrients. You can have crops that have a higher vitamin A content or vaccine content and so forth. So it is a worthwhile task, because we are protecting biodiversity. We are using the technology also to benefit our people. So
what the thing is, Jannel, I don't want us to scare the public out there. In other words, what I'm reading here, there are more benefits to be derived.
Of course. Improved varieties of corn, improved varieties of soybean, improved varieties of canola. These are basically, most of the crops which have been utilized and genetically modified over time. But you also have the improvements with medicines and vaccines, for example. Certain industries now are trying to find mechanisms to move away from the syringe and the injection for babies. So you want to have formulas which are ready, vaccine ready to give babies. So these are aspects of genetic modification which are important, and and are necessary if you're looking for food security, using efficiency of labor, and all of those little intricate aspects. But yes, there are a number of benefits which can be derived. For farmers specifically, using Roundup Ready crops.
Yes,
pest and disease control. Right now in Jamaica, the experimenting with the papaya spot virus. Right now they have a GM variety of papaya experimenting on. So we should not be fearful of the GM technology, because when the technology is developed, before it goes out there, the technology is evaluated. But the problem is you cannot be certain as to what is going to happen. No technology, when a technology is developed, it is neutral. It is how the persons out there use the technology. Herbicide is not about technology. But if you tell the farmers use 5 mLs, the farmers use 15 mL.
That's right.
So it's how the technology is used. That is the problem.
Absolutely.
So we can see a lot of benefits from the GM variety in terms of even the climate change.
Right.
We can develop, because as we know, well, the temperature is going to be a little higher. We're going to get less rainfall. So we can use the technology to develop certain varieties.
Drought-resistant
varieties.
Crops that grow in high temperatures and so
on. The way forward, we have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Let us.
We want all St. Lucians to get involved. If you're watching us right now or you're listening to this program, talk to 3 other people about GMOs, or talk to them about biotechnology, biosafety. Get the information, because we will make decisions about this one by one, case by case. We will not just rule out GMOs altogether, but we have to be educated and make an educated decision. So the way forward is for us to all get more information, talk about it, and as St. Lucians, come to a decision about what we want to do with these genetically modified organisms.
Because I know we have been eating, for example, our cornflakes and stuff like that. I mean, they are genetically modified, right?
The majority of the brands of cornflakes that you eat are made from genetically modified corn.
Most likely.
The majority of the soft drinks and sodas, which are made with sweeteners from corn syrup, that corn is usually genetically modified corn. So I think the way forward is for public participation. We want to have a system in which the public is involved, that they have the say as well, that they can identify what a genetically modified organism is, or what the products are, that they should be interested in reading the labels on the products that they buy. So their participation is important in the decision-making process as we go along.
Peter?
The GMO technology is there, and we have to use it. As Jannel said earlier on, the population of the world is going to be 9 billion in 2050. And in St. Lucia, land is a finite resource. We don't have enough land to produce all the food that we want. So we have to embrace the technology. Not that we have to embrace the technology alone, because we need to produce more food, plus our farmers out there, they are degrading the resource that is being used to produce the food. That is the land resources. So we can need more food on a degraded resource.
On a non-traditional way. We have to produce more in a non-traditional way.
Definitely. I want to thank you all for being here. I really want to thank you all, because I think there's so much to discuss, but I think we have exhausted our time.
Yes.
We'll have a plan B.
Yes.
So, Jannel, thank you. Thank you, George, and thank you, Cletus, for being here. You've been watching Agriculture on the Move. I'm thanking you, the viewers, for viewing. I hope you got information. But, of course, later on, you will know the telephone numbers to contact to get more information. Until then, I'm Phillip Sydney saying goodbye and see you again.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agriculture mouvement.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole en mouvement.